Well, welcome to this second of my blogs that I'm putting out on line today. The last time, if you remember, I was in a slightly more casual look, the Bruce Willis look, I call it. Many have thought I resemble him, many haven't. But I've lost the vest and gone for the polo, the more suave and sophisticated of looks. And for those who are old enough and can remember the Black Magic chocolate advert, the dark character coming in, silhouette, polo neck, whatever. The reality is, each of us watching this, anyone in the world, will have someone that they look up to, will have a character, a possible world view that they think, that's brilliant. I like that. I can get behind that. I understand that. I'll support that. There's never over our hearts and minds a to let sign. Let me tell you, that's the truth. Okay. Um, and so today I want to look at who it is that's in that place in your life, to be honest. Because here we are. I think last time I did a blog, we were 3 weeks into COVID. We were on a complete shutdown and the problems that presented then. And actually, it was Easter time. And here we are now, what, 86 days away from Christmas and facing possibly another snap, a 2 week snap. We don't know yet. Boris will inform us, our fearless leader, about what happens next. But here we are, and who'd have thought it? Over 1 million dead in the world. Who'd have thought that our National Health Service would have done a sterling job and got us through it, only to possibly face these last 3 months of the year with flu and possibly other ailments coming to the fore alongside COVID, a second wave. Who'd have thought that? And the use of our police, not simply to deal with crime, but to deal with crowds and people gathering and curfews and all that element of society. All these things are now part of our experience and our world today, not simply in England, but the world globally. And so I want to look at this whole area of what it is, because it's something or it's someone, that's a truth you can quote me on, has that power and place in our lives. We'll follow it, we'll sound like it, we'll look like it. And at Christmas, we will be celebrating the birth of this boy, yes, this child, but more than that, this hope, this character that carried so much more than people first realized. Little did they know what was in store for this child as he became a man. His mother knew. She'd been told by God, but others didn't. That just dawned on them. We often know Jesus and the 12, and it took them forever to realize who this bloke was. But here was this guy who set foot on earth, who stepped into a situation that was horrific. The people of God, the Jews, Israel as we know them, as a nation, were under incredible subjugation from the Romans. Again, they've been conquered. Happened throughout their histories. Um, it was a real tight spot, and into this came this hope, this note. Folks had been straining to hear, but suddenly it started to make a noise and to speak and to exercise that which was the hope for the world. Or to use a biblical example of that from the Bible, it would be from fourth gospel, which is the Gospel of John, named after myself, and chapter 3 verse 16, which is, for God so loved the world that he gave his only son. God's always been a God who gives. So in the situation we find ourselves in, we can compare that and contrast that to the situation Jesus found himself in and the world at that time. It was under incredible change and pressure and pain. It was in a place it hadn't been before, and it was just awful. Yet into that situation steps this individual, a boy, yes, but more than a boy, more than a child that would grow up and change the whole history of humanity and bring that choice and chance for humanity and history to tell a very different story. And we'll celebrate it, as I say, in 86 days at Christmas. This is not something you look up to. God isn't to be elevated in that sense. Yes, he's to be worshipped, but he's not to be elevated in that sense because that borders on idolatry, or God becomes some lucky charm that we have hanging from our rear view mirror in our car, some, chain and cross like a talisman. No, God's a little bit bigger and a bit more serious than that. But in order to know that, you actually have to kneel. If you read the story of this inclusive God's arrival, the first people to engage with him were the shepherds, the outcasts. These were the people who didn't necessarily mingle or were to be found amongst the crowds. They were on the outskirts on their own looking after sheep. But it was to them first that he spoke, and he brought them in. And they didn't look down upon this child. They knelt. And this is an amazing phrase. Eddie Askew puts it beautifully in his poetry. That speaks, and they looked eye to eye into the face of God himself. What a moment. It then follows on the Magi, however many of them there were and wherever they came from. We're never quite sure as a body of faith. We trot out these lines, but we're not certain. But they came, in fact, and equally men of intellect, men of profession, bowed, and they brought gifts. They honoured God. But it's one of those things you need to do is to find that which in your life is the thing that you honour. Find that in your life which resonates and for you is a truth you can get behind. There are many options today. There are many things touting in the marketplace for your attention, not necessarily just your finance, but for your contribution and support. Some of them are valid. The people who are fighting against climate change, for example, those who are fighting against and are making great strides against slavery. There has never been a larger volume of slaves in history than there are today. And we think back to Wilberforce, who was the one who brought about the end of and abolished slavery. But there are today more slaves than then in his day. But whoever it is, there is someone. And I want you to think about that. I'm not asking you to jump on board with me. I have my faith. I have my belief and that which I put my trust in and turn to and call on and look for and wait on. And for me, that is not something like a magic trick where certain things are all lined up and lo and behold, the rabbit pops out the hat. No, this is a God who turns up because he turned up all those years ago in Bethlehem. And he will continue to turn up to all those that ask of him to be present, to reveal himself. Will, of course, ask of us to believe, because the old saying goes, show me yourself, God, and I will believe. And God says, no, believe, and I will show you myself. This is not something that is simple, but it's something that can transform, can transport us to a different place in times of trouble, in times of testing, in times of pain, and in times of loss. And we're in that place now. But it was the same for this boy, this man who we call Jesus. He stepped into this arena and he gave hope. He brought life and he changed history. And to this day, the book that speaks about him is still the best-selling book in the world by far. It's one of the biggest faiths in the world. All those people can't be wrong, can they? But that's for you to think through. I'm not here to make you jump either way. I'm just here just to share with you my thoughts on this blog as we sit in this possible moment where another breakdown for maybe a tough couple of weeks, this snapshot they're calling it, will take place, and we'll all have to self-isolate and only make journeys that are essential, etc., etc. And it's in those times of testing and those times of isolation and those times of proving, really, that that which will last shows itself. And for me, the thing that lasts and proves and shows itself again and again, God who created it all and is at the center of it all, is calling to us to return, all of us, return to that which we've lost, and that is our relationship with Him. So these are just some thoughts for us to think about as we advance towards Christmas in these next 86 days and all what that might mean, whether Christmas will be like Christmases like no other, I don't know. All I know is that for me and for mine, as it says in the Bible, we shall just worship God at that point, as we do every day. But at that point, thank Him for sending this change, this choice, this child into the world, being the individuals, the people who can get behind and support and really lean into and receive that which they were created for, which is great relationship. So that's just some thoughts for me today. And if you have any questions, you're thinking you are just talking out of your head. That's a rephrase of what that actual. But if that's what you think, come back to me. I have nothing to lose. I have everything to gain. But I just put this out there and just say, God bless you in this time, and God bless those who are at that front edge doing such a remarkable work. My prayers and my support that and those who do that, who have pulled us through the fire, and again maybe looked to do the same. But I pray that they will know His strength and presence in those moments. I pray that for you. So there you are, and with that, I leave you these thoughts. See you again soon.